Hello, and welcome to CTY's Vision for Educating Advanced Learners in the 21st Century. My name is Emily Dolinsky, and I am the Senior Research Program Coordinator at the Johns Hopkins Center for Talented Youth. CTY is very excited to offer these sessions to celebrate the 45th anniversary of CTY by highlighting our past, present, and future, as well as some of our recent research on advanced learners. So in this session, we will be focusing on CTY's vision for educating advanced learners in the 21st century. I'd like to start by introducing you to today's speaker, Tricia Schellenbach, CTY's Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives and Public Relations. And with that, Tricia, take it away. Tricia, you are muted.
All right. Thank you so much, Emily. As Emily said, I am Tricia Schellenbach, CTY's Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives and Public Affairs. And I'm really looking forward today to talking with you about CTY's vision for educating advanced learners in the 21st century. We're going to be talking today about CTY's strategic roadmap or a strategic plan. But what is a roadmap? Well, the dictionary defines it as a map showing roads, especially for automobile travel. And that makes me laugh because it makes me think of a crumpled up atlas in a seat back pocket that nobody uses anymore because we all use these apps on our phones with turn-by-turn instructions. I know that I would be lost without one. But the dictionary also describes it as a detailed plan to guide progress toward a goal. And CTY's strategic plan or roadmap is very much this. It is very much a guide to get us to a goal. And it shares in common some key elements with more traditional roadmaps. It has a beginning, or a planning phase, which we'll talk a little bit about. It has stops along the way, sometimes some detours, and it has a destination in mind, a goal that, or a set of goals that we want to achieve. And so I want to talk a little bit about that planning process. Most strategic plans are both a look internally and a look internally. So in other words, it can be both a mirror and a window. And when CTY began its strategic planning process, we wanted to take both of those things in stock. So we asked questions like, where is CTY today? Where do we want to go? What are our strengths and what are our weaknesses? And we looked outside and we said, what's happening in the world? What's happening in the vast field of online learning? What is happening within gifted education? And sort of what is happening in the research fields. And what we kind of came to the conclusion of is in some ways kind of obvious. We sit at Johns Hopkins University, and Johns Hopkins University is a major research university, and we have an obligation as a part of that university to contribute to its mission as well, and that mission is knowledge for the world. We also saw that we had emerged from the pandemic with 2 years of no in-person programs, and also a third year with a very challenging, to put it mildly, return to those in-person programs. We had spent the pandemic working very hard and with a great deal of ingenuity on our online learning space. And while that had gone extraordinarily well, we certainly emerged from this pandemic landscape a little battered. And those are sort of the challenges that we saw ourselves in, but we also knew that we had strengths. And those strengths included a well-established research agenda that focused on access and inclusion. We also knew that we had a very long history. In fact, we're celebrating 45 years of it right now, and an incredibly dedicated community. When we looked externally, we saw a post-pandemic landscape with an incredible growth of online learning options. It wasn't just the number of learning options that had grown, but also the quality of those options, which made sense because where had everyone turned during this time? We had all turned online. We also saw that major talent development centers like ours, our peers in the field, were all experiencing challenges. It wasn't just us. And while their challenges may have been different, we were all sort of finding our footing. And then also we saw that as schools were returning to sort of business as usual, it really wasn't business as usual. They were focusing on an incredible amount of learning loss in their students, and fewer resources were being dedicated to advanced learners. So this is early 2023, at the beginning of our planning process. And where did we arrive as we had been thinking about this? Well, where we came to the conclusion that understanding that we sat within Johns Hopkins University and looking around at the internal and external landscape that really was going to require us to innovate in this shifting world of both gifted education and education more broadly, we wanted to be a center for innovation. So this is a new focus for us, right? We wanted to be a center for innovation, both for advanced learners and their families, but also for the field of education and education defined more broadly. So it's a sort of a new focus, but with the same goal, and that goal is to deliver on our mission. That goal has never changed. And in fact, in the decade that I've been at CTY, when we've had more than one strategic plan, this is certainly not our first, that has always been the goal of any of our strategic plans, is to deliver on our mission. And that mission has largely stayed the same. There have been some tweaks a lot over the years, but in general, our goal is to advance the field of gifted education through our research on testing and programs and other academically and supporting other supports for academically advanced students. And we also want to focus on the premise that advanced learners come from every community and demographic. And we aim to understand how those students need to be nurtured to achieve their potential, not just as scholars, but also as global citizens. Our vision is to be innovative, inclusive, integrated, informed, and informative, using forward-thinking, sustainable strategies that serve our entire community, and that community includes education broadly. As part of our planning process, we knew that the mission and vision was a strong foundation, but it's also incredibly brief. And we wanted to articulate some foundational pillars. And these pillars are frankly elements that have been a part of CTY throughout its history. They just simply hadn't been put to paper. So we took some time and looked at what really makes CTY CTY. And where we landed, and I'm going to go through each of these in a little bit more detail, but essentially the pillars are that advanced learners come from every community and demographic. That's well articulated in our mission and our vision. That not all advanced learners are the same, that we need differentiation among our population. That CTY believes in providing both acceleration and enrichment. You'll often hear gifted learning providers talk about acceleration or enrichment. We believe that you need both. We believe in facilitated learning over direct instruction. So that's that instructor teacher as a peer learner. And then we believe in strength through collaboration and partnerships. And finally, that peer community and peer networking are incredibly important to this community of advanced young learners. Okay, so let's start with advanced learners existing in every community and demographic. So CTY knows that we serve advanced learners. That's the baseline, but they are not all the same. They come with their own unique needs. They come from different racial backgrounds, economic backgrounds, religious backgrounds. And we serve a global community, so their geography is different. And they also come with different ways of thinking, different ways of problem solving, and their strengths and their interests are not all the same. So we want to create a safe and welcoming environment for each and every one of those students. So some of the ways this manifests for CTY include Our USVI MAPS program, this is a program in the US Virgin Islands that supports high potential students in mathematics and brings them from what might be below grade level in a resource challenged public school system to an above grade level space in mathematics. We would also be remiss if we didn't mention our CTY Scholars Program. This is a long-time program that focuses on students from diverse economic backgrounds. Many of these students are first generation, and it brings them through freshman year through senior year of high school and supports their college application process. And also our CTY Baltimore Emerging Scholars Program, which this past year celebrated a decade of being in existence and supports students in Baltimore City schools who might not otherwise be identified as advanced learners and who might not have certain opportunities for enrichment or acceleration. And we provide them with a CTY like course experience and focus on alternate methods of identification, including professional developments for teachers who might be working with these students. Another pillar is that we provide differentiation among advanced learners. And as I said before, it's sort of the baseline that CTY serves advanced learners, but they fall into different spaces. And so we have created identification levels so that we can meet students where their needs are. That top level would be our set or grand honors level. Our advanced CTY level is sort of 4 grade levels above. Our CTY level is roughly 2 grade levels above. And then there's advanced learners who more broadly, and these may be unidentified students, they may fall into what we are calling our emerging level. These are students who have some indication that they are advanced learners, whether that's through a teacher, through performance in school, but haven't perhaps qualified in what we would consider to be traditional methods of identification, so that testing piece. And we want to give these students courses that meet their needs, and we do that through a variety of different types of courses, and just this past summer introduced our courses for emerging students. And so, as I mentioned, our examples might include that emerging level math or verbal courses. I think that's another important piece, is that it might also reflect different domains where someone might be advanced in one domain and not in another. A third pillar is that we want to meet advanced learners' needs for both acceleration and enrichment. I think this is somewhat self-explanatory, but we want to ensure that our programs are providing both, and that these learning experiences are providing above grade level content, but also giving students the opportunity to dig deeper and go at a pace that matches their skills and interests. And so examples of that might include a microbiology course for elementary students, or a cryptology course that might be taught by someone from the NSA. That's something they could never get in school. Or catching the criminal forensics course for younger students. So applying these really high level concepts at a younger age. CTY values facilitated learning over direct instruction. So this is an evidence-based approach that maximizes the classroom time for learning. Put another way, it means that students are not constantly experiencing a lecture. We would consider that to be an unsuccessful course if a student was only experiencing lectures. That's not to say that lectures don't occur in our courses, but we want to maximize that time for hands-on learning and for engagement with their peers. This is the idea that the instructor is a peer learner working alongside their students. And I had a really hard time coming up with examples for this because it really does sort of sit within every experience we try to offer. And just one example that comes to mind is project or problem-based learning. So for example, if someone were learning about paper airplanes, rather than teaching these students about the best features of a paper airplane, students would work with a paper airplane and then document and report out on their own what the best features were to make these things go. Another pillar is that we become stronger through collaboration, and sitting within Johns Hopkins University, we have so much opportunity for this. We get the opportunity to collaborate with experts, so from so many different disciplines, truly people who are at the top of their field, to provide CTY students with a richer and fuller learning experience. That experience may come in the form of a guest lecture or perhaps an expert-led course, but it can also come in the form of research-based collaboration, where CTY is learning more about a particular research question through this collaboration and is able to give back and report back to the field. So examples include the AI tutoring project that CTY researchers are working on with the School of Education, with colleagues in the School of Engineering, to ascertain sort of the role of HI, the potential role of HI or AI in the classroom. Another example is the CTY Baltimore Emerging Scholars program that I spoke of, which is really, really a wonderful public-private collaboration with Baltimore City Public Schools. And that does, in fact, benefit not just the students who are in this program, and it is absolutely special for those students, but what we're learning about alternate methods of identification there is truly, truly important, much more broadly. And then the MAPS program in the U.S. Virgin Islands I spoke with would not be possible without the collaboration we have with the district there in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Our final pillar is about peer networking and fostering community. And we believe that students who come to CTY are just a part of a truly vibrant community of learners. And if anyone had the opportunity last night to attend our panel of alumni, this bore out in just the most amazing way, hearing from these alumni at all different stages, including our very first student ever, Joe Bates, right down to students who are still in college. They to a person spoke about the way in which their CTY community has been a source of strength for them. And CTY students they try new things, they have great academic experiences, but those experiences happen in a safe space, a space that might be safe to fail. And that's truly important for students who maybe have never had an opportunity or had an occasion to fail. They form lifelong friendships with their peers, and they develop skills that really will prepare them for college and their career. So, for example, we have alumni meetups that are incredibly well attended. We also have social media groups that sprout up organically with our students, where they are able to keep in touch long past their course end date. We have an incredibly robust parents Facebook group. So this community extends not just to the students, but to their families. And this parents Facebook group is truly a source of peer feedback and advice, and it's active every single day. And we hear this from families and students, just how important peer community is to them, and that it is really a piece of the CTY experience that they take with them. And our goal really is to infuse this in all of our experiences, regardless of modality. So as we articulated these pillars, which, as I mentioned, really aren't new to CTY, something began to emerge, and it really was this idea that there is something that makes CTY truly unique and makes our experiences truly impactful. And we wanted to also document that as well. And what we came up with was that, rigorous academics, which are really a part of every experience at CTY, it's the heart of it in so many ways, needs to be present in our CTY experiences. But we also need sort of a novel context or approach. And so many of our experiences do that. And what do we mean by novel context or approach? Well, what we mean is that the course isn't necessarily something that you might find in school, or that it's something that grabs the advanced learner's attention. And this is borne out in research that this is incredibly important for students at all levels, but in particular for advanced learners. And so this might look like, for example, learning physics concepts through a course about catapults. It can manifest in so many ways, but our goal is to really make sure it's a part of each and every experience that we have. And then finally, that peer community piece. Again, when we talk to our students, when we talk to our families, this is something that always rises to the top as having a lasting impact. And while we know that it is present in our in-person experiences, we want to make sure it is a part of all experiences across modality. And we want to, and even where it is present, we want to be sure that we're studying it with intentionality. So what would a roadmap be, or a strategic plan be, without goals? So I think it would be pretty directionless. And so I want to think about the strategic goals in our plan as sort of those turn-by-turn instructions that we get with our navigation app. And CTY's strategic roadmap has 5 goals, sort of broad goals that have sub-goals. And I want to talk about each one of them in a little bit more detail. And I also want to talk about some of the progress to the sub-goals. And you'll see I have a little legend here that looks at whether these goals are complete, whether they're in progress, or have not yet begun. So let's start with the first one, building CTY as a foundation for and generator of research. Research has always been critical to CTY. Is in fact the foundation of how we started as an organization, but it has over the years sort of had varying levels of resources and importance. As you know, at different times we focus on our programs or other offerings. We know that as a Center for Innovation, resourcing research, supporting research is going to be incredibly important. And first, we're going to need the infrastructure to achieve that. So at the time that we began this strategic plan, we had an open position for our director of research, and we made it a priority to hire for that role. And so those of you who have attended some of our other presentations during this colloquium may have met Catherine Thompson. She is our director of research, and we're so lucky to have her. So we get to mark that with a complete. We have also hired an evaluation program manager who is just absolutely essential as we think about systematically evaluating our courses and that CTY experience I just spoke about. So we're delighted to have Cheryl as in our evaluation program manager spot. We appointed a SET, a principal investigator. SET is our study of exceptional talent. It has a long history as a sort of program that supported students at the various highest levels of our identification. And we have so many members that we have information about, and we're really, really excited to have a principal investigator appointed there. And then critical to supporting our research is truly, and it sounds obvious, but systems and data. And we are in the process of a very large multi-year project that affects all of CTY, not just research, but to upgrade our systems and data management. And that project is in progress, and it is on track, and it will provide a foundation for us to do the research we want to do. We also want to think about our research agenda and how we fund it. And so, as I mentioned before, we have a pretty well-defined research agenda, largely focused on access and inclusion. And with Catherine's support, we have defined that and refined it further and documented it. And so we can mark that complete. We also want to work with our program teams to drive new research questions, and that's in progress and probably always will be. That needs to be an ongoing piece of what we do here. But our research team and our program team are working incredibly collaboratively on projects like sort of beginning to articulate how we study the peer experience, for example. Identifying funders is another one of those pieces that will probably always be ongoing, but our research team is working collaboratively with our development team to figure out a sustainable funding approach for our many goals. And then finally, CTY has a desire to conduct a longitudinal study. As I mentioned, we have a very long history, 45 years of serving students, and we really want to understand the impacts on those students from the long term. So that is in the very early stages of investigation, of feasibility, and the resourcing that will be required to make that go. And another goal is to unify our curricular approach. So we want to formally articulate what the features are of the CTY experience, and we have done that, as you know, as you all saw that diagram, but we have to go further than that. So we want to develop research questions based on the experience. That is very much in progress. We want to evaluate the effectiveness of the experience. With our evaluation program manager, we have the opportunity to do that. Also in progress and probably will be forever. We want to articulate the testable features designed to promote inclusivity. This is incredibly important and is in progress. It's in the early stages, and we have not yet begun to infuse that into the design of our offerings, but it is something that we intend to do in the next phases of our plan. We want to align the curricular approach across modalities. This has been a major focus over the last, I would say, 12 months. And it comes in different phases, right? So we have identification levels, and this includes that emerging level that I mentioned, which is a fairly new addition to our identification levels. But we also want to offer like courses or similar courses in both online and in-person modalities. We want to do this so we are creating a consistent experience across modalities, and that students can create paths in their learning that is modality agnostic. And we want to be a leader in peer community and online learning. And this is that piece, as we know that peer community exists in the online space. And in many ways, it's so much easier to do there. But in the online space, CTY and almost every other learning provider online has not necessarily cracked the nut of creating robust peer community in that space, not with intentionality, not in a research-based way. And so that is our goal, to become a leader in peer community in the online learning space, and that is in progress. And then more deliberately, we want to assess the peer community in our in-person experiences. As I mentioned, we know that it's there, but we have not begun to assess it with any sort of intentionality. Training CTY expert instructors. Instructors are at the heart of everything that CTY does in the classroom. And they are our peer learners, they are our facilitators, and we want to ensure that all students who come to CTY get to engage with an instructor that has been trained in the sort of CTY way. And so we want to establish criteria for becoming a CTY expert. That is very much in progress. But then we also want to establish a training program for our instructors, and we haven't yet begun that. And we want to recruit a diverse population of instructors who are representative of our full community of advanced learners. And that's incredibly important, and it is in progress. We know that we can always grow in this space, but we have implemented in the interviewing process intentional prompts and other sort of scaffolds to help us to intentionally recruit a diverse population of instructors for our students. Another goal is collaborating across Johns Hopkins University to mutual benefit. Couple of sub-goals here. I think this goal is fairly self-explanatory, but there are some sub-goals that I want to call out. Exploring the relationship between CTY and JHU admissions. This has been something that CTY has wanted to do for a good long time. And it is challenging because, quite frankly, we all have really aggressive schedules that work on a cycle. And so we are working very hard with that team to find areas of collaboration that include working together on how we talk about college counseling, for example, and also creating experiences or connectivity between CTY students who matriculate to JHU and connecting with them once they're here. Those are just two of the sort of broad range of collaborations we're exploring with the JHU admissions team. We want to leverage JHU expertise in course development. So that includes sort of understanding that Johns Hopkins University is a leader in the development and study of artificial intelligence, and looking at ways that we can collaborate with them as we sort of understand that becomes a very big area of interest for our students. But also inviting them to lead small courses for our students and giving our students access to experts at Johns Hopkins University. And finally, we want to build on our current collaborations to further our research and innovation. So that includes that AI tutoring project I spoke about, as well as something called the dynamic spatial assessment, which is a really unique assessment that we are working on with colleagues around Johns Hopkins University, including in engineering, to look at the role of spatial skills in talent identification. We also want to collaborate not just within Johns Hopkins University, but externally with other educational organizations that can perhaps fill gaps that we see internally or that we can support with our own expertise. So leveraging that outside expertise includes college counseling, which is something that CTY has dabbled in from time to time and done so extraordinarily well. But our resources are not really set up to do this at scale. So we have partnered very recently with an outside educational organization to support our CTY Scholars Program, as well as to help develop more robust college counseling for CTY students more broadly, including in the form of webinars and potentially with opportunities for group workshops and one-on-one counseling. That might be something in the future, which is why this is very much in progress. The other space is school replacement courses. So CTY has traditionally offered a mix of enrichment style courses and school replacement courses. School replacement courses can be a little bit tricky in terms of the accreditation requirements, and in particular the state-based requirements, which vary from state to state for an organization for CTY to keep up with and maintain. It's also, they're also not particularly unique, and there are many, many different providers for these school type replacement courses. So we have been looking at how we can provide direction to our families who are seeking these types of courses without necessarily providing them ourselves. And then finally, we want to support other organizations with our own expertise. And a really good example of this is the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation, which we have had a very long and strong relationship with for many, many years. This is an organization that supports students from varied economic backgrounds and who are truly high potential, high achieving students. And CTY, they look to CTY to help bring their mission to those students and help to pair them with the services that they provide. And so we are able to do that because we have that large community. And finally, I want to conclude this talk by talking about just a few major efforts within CTY right now that are truly driven by the strategic plan. And the first one I've talked about just a little bit. It's our CTY 4.0 project, otherwise known as our Systems and Infrastructure Project. This is, again, a multi-year project that is extraordinarily large. It spans the entire organization. It is essential for data and research, but it is also going to support a more nimble organization more broadly within our program space, within our strategic initiative space, and it is going to help us deliver on a more integrated catalog that supports that unified curricular approach I talked about. And there we are again, that unified catalog or unified curricular approach. Um, the first phases are focusing on online offerings, the first phases of this project, but it will expand to all of our offerings. And the goal here really is to make sure that the CTY experience that we defined with peer community, rigorous academics, and novel context or approach is present throughout our catalog and ideally in each and every offering. It includes a shift away from school replacement courses that I just spoke about. It also introduces a synchronous element to almost all of our online offerings in support of that peer community feature. And it supports pathways to study topics across modalities. So this is a very, very large project. It will also likely be multi-year. Another major project driven by the strategic plan is defining what the next decade of CTY Baltimore Emerging Scholars will look like. As I mentioned, this program just celebrated 10 years, and we want to think about how do we build upon this for Baltimore City and also for CTY. And what we want to look at as we do that is a pipeline approach. We know how important it is to start young, to cultivate talent, but how do we then nurture it, not just in elementary school, but in middle school, through high school, and then hopefully provide them with a strong foundation for higher education. We want to connect to JHU and other organizations that support advanced learners and underserved populations. And we want to continue to build upon that really special public-private collaboration we have with Baltimore City Schools. And then finally, the course-based assessment, which is a project that relates back to something that I spoke about, that includes that emerging eligibility level that we recently introduced. So we know that there are students that are advanced learners who fall outside of our traditional identification methods that include, and our traditional identification level. So that CTY level, the advanced CTY level, even that sort of set grand honors level. These are students who maybe they don't score well on standardized tests. Maybe they don't have access to standardized tests. And maybe they haven't been exposed to the content that would support them to perform well in standardized testing. So we've created a very small number of courses that are open to students with both with traditional CTY identification levels as well as those who maybe don't have identification yet, and we're calling that emerging. And we want to we have integrated research into this program delivery so that we can see how do these students perform, the emerging students along with more traditional CTY students, and to sort of see, are we missing students, and can a course-based assessment serve as identification for future CTY courses. And our goal is to make this applicable across modalities. So in other words, that we would have courses open to emerging eligibility students, both in person or online. So that was a lot of information in a fairly short amount of time. But what I hope I've laid out is sort of a bold vision for educating advanced learners in the 21st century. But all of that's great, right? But how are we going to how are we going to get there? What is success going to look like? Well, it's going to require us to innovate in areas that advance diversity and access. This commitment to diversity and access is intentionally woven across our goals, throughout our pillars. It needs to be a part of each and every single thing that we do. It's going to depend on collaboration. So many of the goals that I just shared with you are not something that CTY can do alone. We need to rely on our peers in the education space and also on experts outside of it. And then we need to create and investigate that unique CTY experience. It doesn't end at articulating what it is. We need to continuously iterate on it and investigate and evaluate it. And then finally, we need to research and deliver on effective practices for the field. So yes, we absolutely want to provide that CTY experience for the students who come to us, but we also want to create and have impact beyond that and take our learnings to the field. So that's what success will will look like. So I want to stop there and say thank you. I also want to invite you to review our strategic roadmap online if you'd like a slightly deeper dive. And you can do that by looking at our QR code here. And you can also use the QR code in the bottom right of your screen to sign up for other sessions that will happen today and tomorrow. So thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Trisha. That was not only informative, but also just makes me even more excited to see what C2I continues to do. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.